In the winter of AD 57, the Apostle Paul sat in the Greek city of Corinth, preparing for an ambitious journey to Spain. To reach the western edge of the empire, he needed to secure the cooperation of the Christian community in Rome, a church he had never visited. To introduce his theology, Paul dictated a sprawling 7,114-word letter to his scribe, Tertius. The resulting manuscript was an exhaustive, systematic summary of the Christian gospel. Paul chose a deacon named Phoebe from the nearby port of Cenchrea to deliver the letter. As a wealthy patron who funded her own travel, she possessed the social standing required to represent an apostle in the imperial capital. By pairing the technical precision of a professional scribe with a high-status emissary, Paul ensured his complex legal arguments would arrive in Rome with both accuracy and authority. In the ancient world, couriers performed the texts they carried. Phoebe stood before Rome's divided house churches, using her voice and gestures to communicate Paul's specific tone and emphasis to the believers gathered there. The listeners heard Paul employing the diatribe, a rhetorical style common in philosophical schools. He used rapid-fire questions and answers to debate imaginary opponents, anticipating their objections before they could voice them. Paul's opening argument leveled a universal charge against humanity. He argued that every person, from the moral religious leader to the pagan outsider, was equally under sin and accountable to God's judgment. This indictment stripped away any basis for human pride. By proving that everyone was trapped in the same spiritual bankruptcy, Paul cleared the way for a solution that relied entirely on divine grace. Whenever his argument reaches a potential misunderstanding, Paul uses the phrase me genoito, may it never be, to pivot from human failure toward a divine rescue. He moves the argument into a courtroom setting. Humanity stands before a judge, guilty of breaking a perfect law, and facing a debt that is impossible for a person to pay on their own. The solution is the legal transfer of justification. This credits Christ's perfect record to the believer's account, clearing their debt. This acquittal is received through trust alone. As the balance demonstrates, human effort is removed, leaving faith as the sole requirement for righteousness. Justification changes the believer's legal standing permanently. They are no longer condemned criminals. They are adopted heirs with a completely clean record. However, a glaring problem remains. If a believer is legally free, why does the internal urge to sin stay so powerful and persistent? Paul describes an internal tug-of-war. The regenerated spirit desires God, but the unregenerated physical nature, the flesh, pulls with equal force in the opposite direction. He uses the imagery of being sold under sin, where the individual desires to do good but lacks the inherent capacity to carry it out. In Romans chapter 8, Paul introduces the Holy Spirit as the resolution to this war. The Spirit provides the daily power to live out the requirements that the law could only define but never fulfill. The Christian life is defined by this grit-filled struggle. Perfection isn't immediate. It is a long-term fight sustained by the Spirit's presence. Paul eventually expands his perspective. He moves from the struggle inside the individual heart to the macro scale of the entire material universe. He defines the current state of nature as sustenazo, the groaning together of creation. Every part of the material world suffers under the weight of entropy and decay. Paul characterizes these symptoms of entropy as birth pangs. The cosmos is enduring this distress while awaiting physical liberation from the curse of sin. God's plan for salvation concludes with the physical renewal of the universe. It is a comprehensive restoration of the material world, not a spiritual escape from it. To anchor this hope, Paul presents an unbreakable sequence of divine actions called the Golden Chain. The links follow a specific order. Those God foreknew, he predestined. Those he predestined, he called. Those he called, he justified. And those he justified, he glorified. In the unpredictable environment of the Roman Empire, this chain provided a sense of unshakable certainty. If the divine process had begun in a believer's life, Paul argued, its completion was guaranteed. The Epistle to the Romans dismantles human pride by showing the scale of the debt, then replaces it with the assurance of a cosmic renewal that God has committed to finish.